I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Brianna Lemon. I am one of the panelists, and I'll introduce the other panelists. So Anna and Nsisong are also going to join us as panelists this evening. And I want to thank you, everybody who's been able to join. And so what we're going to talk about tonight are like how you navigate internships, jobs, give you some background on why we chose what we wanted to study, like offers and things like that, and then also networking. And we'll also touch on a few other things, but those are the questions we're going to answer at the beginning, and then we'll open the floor for any questions. So we're going to start with why we chose our majors. So Anna, if you would like to start, and then I'll jump in there.
Okay, sounds good. So when I was in high school, I was always really interested, in math and physics. And I feel like you get it a lot with people who are going into engineering and computer science. But when I first started at Case, I was actually a mechanical engineer. And the reason I got interested in computer science is more of a practical reason. When I was trying to apply for internships, my freshman year, I realized that all of the positions that I was looking at were for American citizens only. And I'm an international student and I plan to stay in the United States post-college. I do not want to return back to my home country. So that just became like a really massive obstacles because companies like NASA, Boeing, they rarely hire international students. So I looked up the major that would hire the most people and it turned out to be computer science. So I kind of started switching over and taking more interest in it then. So that was at the end of my freshman year, but it was a really steep change going into coding. As a person who's never done it before prior, it was really tough competing with a lot of people that, were in the field for a long time. I know guys who have been coding since middle school and they knew how to do things really quickly. So that was kind of like my first experience in transition into computer science.
All right, Nsisong, would you like to add anything?
Sure. So I started out as a computer science major at Case Western. But then after my first internship experience, actually, after my first two internship experiences, I realized I was interested in technology, but I was also interested in the more like humanistic elements to it. And then so I did more research on fields within computer science and I found out more about human-computer interaction. And I was like, okay, cool. I'd really like to spend more time studying this in depth. So then I was able to create my own major at Case, which was awesome. So then now, like, my classes are like mixtures. So I've taken data science, but I'm also doing a capstone on design anthropology and looking at hackathons, but how anthropological frameworks can be applied there. So it's been a really cool mix.
So when I was younger, my mom sent me to computer camp every single summer was a different type of camp. So she sent me to computer camp one summer and I took apart the computer and put it back together. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to do this the rest of my life. Not until I was a sophomore in college did I realize that was really computer engineering. But I came into college as a computer science major. And I really like it. And I'm also a marketing major as well. So I like the song was saying, the human interaction. So I'm very much like, how do we get people more involved with technology and how can we make it more user friendly? So I like to understand how things work and be able to expose other people to it. So that's what really drew me to technology. I guess we'll jump into how we got our internships and jobs. So I guess we'll just, whoever wants to start off, then we can go with whoever wants to speak first about it.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, I switched into computer science at the beginning of my sophomore year. And that was the time I was trying to apply for my first co-op and internship. And it was a really big uphill battle just because I didn't really understand that a lot of the stuff you learn in class does not translate to the way companies do recruiting, interviewing, and even what you need for the job. And I remember like just being really frustrated and like struggling, like keeping up with the rest of my classmates when I got reached out to by Google for their engineering practicum program. And for those of you who are freshmen or sophomores, I would really recommend looking into one of these programs. Facebook and Microsoft also have them. It's meant for like starting computer science students. And I just got really excited. I was like, okay, this is gonna be like the break. And I remember spending all of winter break that year, just like studying coding questions, you know, going through crack the coding, interview, lead code. Those are like the typical ones. And then I had the interview and I did okay, but I didn't definitely do amazing. And I just remember getting a phone call and like telling me that I was rejected, and it was really, really heartbreaking because I just, you know, I picked myself up and kept applying for jobs. I think I applied for like 100 jobs my sophomore year and just would wake up every day with a rejection email in my inbox. I actually remember Facebook rejected me like 10 times at one point because like they had a glitch in their system and I would just get 10 emails like being rejected. But eventually I applied through Handshake. I think it's called else now, or maybe it's Shake. It's like the case job site for a job at Philips. And I ended up getting really well along with the manager during the interview and got that role. But yeah, so Grace Hopper is just great for overall finding an internship or full-time role because there's over 500 companies looking to recruit, looking to hire, and you can really sit with them one-on-one. And I think like, I guess I can also talk about this more when we cover networking. Like you never really know who you're gonna come along, who you're gonna get along with. A lot of the times you think like you're really well fit for a role, but it turns out that the person you're talking to, you're just not getting along with them. Like they don't think you're a good fit. Maybe you don't feel like you're a good fit. But it just so happened that I talked to an Apple recruiter, and actually at the time I like didn't use any Apple products whatsoever. And I just remember like him asking me something really like random, and I just responded and we started laughing, and he's like, wow, you seem like a great person for the job, just with this like small interaction. And he set me up for like a series of interviews that eventually led to the offer. So I think like from that perspective, I just say you never know like when luck is gonna struck out. Like obviously study and be prepared, but it's so much matters on like if you meet the right person at the right time. So then I had an Apple internship then, and I also had another Apple internship the following summer, and now I signed with them on full time.
Awesome. I guess I can go next. So I've had a different path. I've had quite a few different internships. My freshman year, I had an internship with a small startup that's actually at Case called Entwine Connect. So basically, they're like the Internet of Things. They have a bunch of different devices that connect on networks and send data through the network to make something do something. Like, so what I was a software developer at that point. So I just remember my first interview with him. I walked in and he asked me for my resume. And then he was like, so when can you start? I'm like, oh, okay, Monday, does that sound good? So that was my first one. And then I remember he told me literally, read this whole manual so you understand what we do. So I had to go through their whole user manual and fix typos and everything else, but I actually understood what Entwine was. And then my first project there, they said, I want you to code in Python on a Linux machine using your Windows. And I'm like, whoa, okay, let me go get some dummy help books. But that was like a learning experience for me. And that's what internships are. So if they throw you obstacles, you can't just say, I can't do this or something. Like just like they know you can't. That's why you're at an internship. But if you show them that you're trying and that you're willing to put in the work, they're going to help you. So the following year, my sophomore year, I ended up getting a job at PNC in Pittsburgh, so at their headquarters. And that was interesting because it was like a business internship, but my head manager was a computer science major. And he saw that I had a very heavy coding background, and he ended up giving me a lot more projects compared to everybody else. And he was like, I know the way you think because you are a computer science major, that you see the end goal and then you go back and you like go step by step on how you're going to complete that process. So it allowed me to expand because I got to develop products and talk to the head managers. I got to talk to different people in the department and ask them what they wanted. And then at the end of the summer, I got to show off this whole app that I created by myself pretty much, and was like, hey, this is what I did. And it was really cool. And that actually was something that I just presented to the job that I ended up getting at JP Morgan. We had a 3-step interview in person where you had to do behavioral, presentation, and technical. And the presentation piece, you had to bring in a project that you were proud of working on. And just so happens, when I worked at PNC, wait, JP Morgan. I said that right. Okay. My interview with JP Morgan, I showed them, hey, this is what I did. This is a project I worked on. And they were like, wow, that's really cool. But it's like little things like that when you're at an internship, they let you roam if you ask. Like if you really show interest and you're not just in your own bubble, then they let you explore more and then it looks good on your resume later on. And then finally, I worked at IBM this last summer, and that was more of a product owner role, which was really cool because I went in as a data analyst. And then I had like teams that I was managing in Mexico and China. And then it was just like a really cool experience because I was also the one coding as well as I was managing these other teams. So it gave me a different perspective. But overall, like just don't be afraid to learn when you do go to the internships because it can be a little bit intimidating. So you just have to be willing to learn, know that you're gonna make mistakes, and then they're probably gonna laugh at you and you just gotta laugh with them. You can't take it to heart because sometimes the mistakes you make, it's like, really, come on now, like you knew that. But I really think that no matter what, just talk to your manager, always communicate, and just do your best.
Yeah, you guys brought up really awesome points about like the best parts of an internship experience. For me, after my freshman year, I worked at Northrop Grumman, and I worked on basically they gave me this really outdated web app they had. I worked on a team with 3 other students, and they had this super long list of GitHub issues, and they basically said, "Oh, just have fun, like just solve as many as you can before the summer's over." So very loose, not a lot of structure, and we got to work as a team, me and the 3 other students that I was paired with, to figure out what was most important priority wise and what we could do with our skill set. So it was really cool understanding, like working to understand my context as part of a student team. But in terms of actually getting to an internship, I wanted to echo that going to conferences is super important. So I've worked at Northrop Grumman, I worked at General Mills during the summer after my sophomore year, and I worked at Accenture last summer. And all of those were through me walking up to recruiters at conferences and just talking about how interested I was in positions at their company. That didn't always result in me getting the job on spot, but just establishing that relationship with at least one person in the company can lead them to introduce you to many more people. Also, just going on LinkedIn and floating around and finding people who are doing work that you find interesting or already working at a company that you like, and just being honest about that and being willing to take 30 minutes out of your schedule to just talk with them and find out more about their life and what that looks like, has helped me a ton in terms of understanding where I want to go, but also just building a network.
We want to touch on negotiations because talking about money is a very uncomfortable subject, no matter which side you're on, whether you're the one paying somebody or whether you're the one like asking for money back. It's just an uncomfortable conversation. So we'll go back through and tell you where we're going to be working when we finish school in a week, where we'll be working, and how we negotiated those offers.
Okay, so I was going to start during my freshman year, which is when I realized how important negotiating was. So at my first internship, I was in a group with a bunch of other students. I was on one team, but we're surrounded by other teams, all of students. Basically, they ran out of room for interns, so we were all in the cafeteria in like these cubicles. But anyway, on one day, everyone's going around and saying like, "Oh, my salary is this. I make this much per hour." And everyone was going around and saying what number they made, and they were all within the same range. But then I realized I was getting significantly less. And then when I said that, the game ended, and everyone just like stopped talking about it because they realized there was like this discrepancy. And in that moment, I learned like it is really important to advocate for yourself when you are like in these conversations, because the worst they can say is no when you're negotiating salary. But in terms of like fast forwarding 3 years, when I was negotiating for my role at Google, initially I tried for a higher salary, and she said, "Oh no, like we cap it at this, not possible at this time." But I made a case and I outlined I have these skills from all these different internships and kind of matched them up with the job description. And even though she said no initially, 3 months later they said, "Oh, we reevaluated your application. We're actually going to give you a bit more." So can you re-sign your offer letter? And I thought that was super cool. So even if you get a no right now, it isn't always a no forever.
But basically, like the way I understood it, and I also learned like during one of my internships when we were talking about salaries, is I was getting under to my peers that recruiters are not always your friend. And when it comes to like bringing you on board and discussing salary, they usually try to undercut you, at least from my experience at the places I worked at. And so for me, what I did, at least like for my full-time offer, I used like the following like steps that really worked well for me and for my friends that we also discussed it. Is first, like you need to consider what type of leverage you have. They bring you the offer and they're gonna tell you, okay, we're gonna be paying you this much base, this much RSU, and this much sign-on bonus, which is the usual like typical breakdown. And what you need to do is first, if you do have a counter offer, can you guys still hear me? Okay, sorry. If you do have a counter offer, then definitely bring that on board and tell them, okay, this is how much I was offered from this company. Is there a way that you guys could match that? A lot of times, however, you might not have a counter offer from another company, like what happens to me. Well, in that case, I talked to one of my friends who already signed and was getting paid more than me. And I said, look, I know this person. We have the same qualifications, we have the same background. Why is she getting paid more than me? Is there a way that could be matched? The third option is go on popular website like levels.fyi is great for seeing how much money are people getting paid in different levels in like I think the most popular like 50 computer science companies, and then try to argue that you should also be getting matched that salary and bring up anything that you can. Like for me, I talked about the things I did in my internships that I thought were valuable. The fact that I'm getting a master's degree, like just like lay it out on all these different things on them during a phone call. It's preferable, not more than over an email. And afterwards, like hang up, say thank you, like I really like I'm looking forward to this job. It would just be great if you guys could meet these different requirements I have. Give them like a few days to talk to their managers, to their HR, to the rest of HR. And when they get back to you, even if they don't meet you like exactly where you want them to, I found that one thing that really works well, be like, okay, that's great, like I really appreciate this offer. If you guys could just match me on this one last thing, then I will sign immediately. Because a lot of times they actually want to bring you on board as soon as possible, because that way they have guaranteed that they have a certain headcount of employees that they can expect, versus if you just keep going back and forth for weeks, then they don't know if you're going to leave to a different company. And I would always try to argue with them, because I know that even sometimes when it like for internships, like they might tell you that they don't actually negotiate, but like a lot of times they will, because they do want to bring you on board. They went through all this effort to already like recruit you. They spent thousands, literally sometimes they spend thousands of dollars on flying you out, on interviewing you, like booking an entire day. So they do want to bring you on board, especially when they make you the offer. So negotiating a few thousand or a few 10,000 like is worth it. And like for me, it actually ended up being almost a $50,000 difference that if I didn't say anything. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, I want to add to that. Like, so what I was saying was like, do your research, like what Anna was saying. Definitely go to those websites, see like the ranges that people are getting paid if you don't have a friend that's in your industry. And also just have a clear understanding of your job description. Like understand what you're doing, what you've applied for, and what the job requirements are. Because that also too might play a part into the salary you might get versus who somebody else might get. Because if they're like a software developer and they're coding all day and you're like, I don't know, software engineer that's not coding as much, but so there might be a discrepancy in payments there. But like still fight for what you think you're worth. But also too, there's a way to do it, like speaking to HR and not your boss. So if you have an interview with the manager, don't ask the manager at the end when they say, do you have any more questions? Yeah, by the way, how much am I getting paid? No, like that's a question that you want to ask like HR later when they call you and say, hey, so we've offered you and said like, this is what you were willing to give you. Do you want to accept? And then that's like a time when you can negotiate it. But it would be not the best idea to ask the manager right then and there if he asks, like ask questions about the job, learn more about the job and see if you want to work there. Always ask questions no matter what. And just in general, like read your contract thoroughly wherever you go, because sometimes too, they might give you a base salary and then you see like if you work overtime, then you might get paid more, or if there's training, you get paid like $50 an hour or something like that. So you might see that there's other things that play into the base salary that you get. So just look into that. And then also too, you get the signing bonus as well. So going into the networking, I know that that's also something that makes people very uncomfortable, especially if you're a computer science major, because some people just don't know how to talk to people. But that's just, sometimes it's easier to code than to have a conversation with somebody else because you're not on the same wavelength or something like that. But networking is a lot less scary than it sounds. Networking is basically just like having a conversation with somebody.
Like I talked earlier about I think like a lot of my sophomore and junior year was just finding people on LinkedIn and talking to them. And also just leverage, I mean, since we're not on campus anymore, it's a bit difficult, or it's a bit different, but you might have to seek out different ways to find people. Sometimes they have speakers come to campus. I know there's an entrepreneurship speaker series that's going on currently on campus, but just not only just going to the talk, but reaching out after talks you might go to on campus or at conferences, and just really trying to establish a relationship with that person, checking in every couple months or so, maybe on holidays, maybe if you have a tough project you're working on, maybe seeking their advice, just having these, making sure that you're someone that's on the back of their mind, maybe sort of. So if an opportunity does come up, you're kind of right there. I found that if you go to a mixer where you know people from a certain company will be there, I try to load something up that I call a water cooler comment. So it's where I pretend I actually work at the company that I want to be in at. And I like do research on the business, and I bring up like, oh, isn't it so crazy that this merger is happening? What do you think about it? Or just some sort of thing that is related to news of the company and makes me seem like I am involved and could pose and work there. That's been really helpful as a kind of a starter into those kinds of conversations.
No, I agree with you. Just so happens that I don't know how I fell into my job at JP Morgan, but I'm very fortunate for it. I applied for a ton of jobs last semester, and then I kept my LinkedIn profile very up to date all the time. And then I just got a message from somebody in HR at JP Morgan that said, "Hey, we have a networking event in Cleveland. Would you like to come?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." Come to find out, I was the only undergrad there when I went. So it was a pretty fun experience. I got to talk to a lot of people, and it was even crazier because there were two women minorities that were the head of the whole thing. So they were like the VPs of digital, and then the VP of computer architecture. So they had them on the hot seat, and they were talking about their experience at JP Morgan and how things have changed. And I'm fortunate enough to, one of them wants to be my mentor, and I'll be working in her department. But that was just because like I kept my networking up to date. I went to an event, even though I didn't know anybody there. It was an event for professionals already. So like people who were looking for another opportunity at another company, but they've already had work experience. And then and literally the deadline for the job I applied for was the next day. So it was just like everything was falling into place because they were like, "We have a software engineering program that we think you'd be perfect for and you should apply for it." And then literally the next day was the deadline, and I like applied for it really fast. But they were really nice people. You really get to see what the company culture is like if you get invited to a company and networking event. Even Wiser had one last semester. I can't remember who the company was, but it was at Michelson and Morley. And they got to talk about their experience at the company as being women in tech and things like that, and how things have changed a little bit more, where like some women remember when they were the only woman in the room full of men, and now there's like at least one or two of them now. So it's nice to hear things like that and how things are changing gradually. But yeah, so you learn things like that at networking events.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Maybe the one more thing I'd add to that, in terms of campus resources, hopefully if school goes back to normal, like starting fall or spring, I would really recommend, yeah, Wiser. I know we have Girls Who Code right now, but also Hexog Society. They usually have like little big mentor mentee system set up that goes every semester. That is actually one of the ways I connected with the people that really helped me when I was struggling to find a job. And then they reached out to their old managers, and then I was able to interview for some of those roles. I would also say, like, you never know when like something crazy is going to happen. I remember when I was working during my first Apple internship, when I took an Uber back from work one time, I was there with another Apple employee and we started talking, and he ended up referring me to like 6 new roles for that I actually ended up working for the next summer. So like even like during like an Uber ride, I guess with a coworker, like if you strike a conversation, it turns out you can actually turn that into a job offer in the long run. So yeah, I would just say keep an open mind, like be positive, like try to like reach out to people. Like usually like I used to reach out to people my sophomore and junior and town on LinkedIn, and like now people started reaching out to me. So it's just really nice that you can kind of keep that cycle going and like help each other out. But usually people won't turn you down unless, you know, they're really busy, and they'll give you like some useful connections and maybe some pointers on how you can improve your resume and who to reach out to for a job. So yeah, that's all I have to add.
Awesome. Well, we've gone through all the questions that were pretty general that we wanted to talk about. So we're going to open the floor up to anybody else, and you can either raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or you can send a message in the chat and we'll answer it. All right, Sarah, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, hi. I'm like a freshman, and I know you guys kind of went over some stuff of like what freshmen and sophomores could do right now, but is there anything like more specific I should be doing to be like looking for internships or like specific classes maybe, or anything, any advice you guys could give?
Definitely go through Handshake. That's how I found my first internship on Case's campus, actually. I was just applying through Handshake, and then I found that one. So I say apply through Handshake, and be open-minded. So have you decided what major you're going into yet?
Yeah, so I declared my major as computer science.
Okay. Well, yeah, definitely look at Handshake, and then even utilize your professors as well. So then you can ask them questions, because you can network through your professors as well. So use them to your advantage. They give really good advice.
Okay, I would add on to that. I like used to mentor a lot of freshmen and sophomores through Hexoc. But basically, like my advice is if you're looking specifically for job experience, yes, Handshake is great because they hire a lot of case freshmen. Also go to hackathons. Like if you have other friends in your major, that is actually like a great way to put things on your resume, even when you don't really have any like project or work experience in computer science. The other thing is definitely apply for those programs that I talked about earlier, like Google, like engineering practicum, I think like Microsoft beginner or something like that. Because they like hire very frequently people who have absolutely no prior computer science experience. The interviews are not terrible. Like you can definitely study for them. And like I know there's been like 4 or 5 people from Case that go every year. And like once you get into those like big companies for those roles, it's much easier to apply next year and kind of build the right network. Maybe the last thing I would add is definitely try to go to Grace Hopper. I don't know if it's not gonna be canceled this year because of the situation, but like try to sign up for next year. If you're just a freshman now, you should definitely go your junior year, because that is how a lot of me and my friends ended up getting really amazing offers and getting to meet really cool companies.
Lots of awesome advice has been shared. The last thing I just want to add is just since it's your first year, like, and since the end of the year is coming, take some time to reflect upon the parts of the year that you really liked and like the parts of computer science that really excite you, and see if you can press deeply into those in terms of understanding where you want to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now, or 4 years from now. But I just want to echo all the awesome pointers the other ladies just gave.
And also don't be too stressed out about getting an internship as a freshman. I was really lucky to have gotten one as a freshman, but some freshmen don't get some, but don't give up. You know what I mean? Like even if you see like there's a volunteer position, that still looks good. Like a paid is great and everything, but if there's like a volunteer role at some company, that's still great because you can put that on your resume and you're learning. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, thank you.
No problem. Anybody else?
I guess while we wait, I have a question for the other panelists. Since we're here, so I know since we're wrapping up like undergrad and grad in your case, Anna, and everything, like all the kind of stress is almost behind us. But what have been like some of the most difficult moments that you've had? Because I guess people kind of see the end result here, but what has been some of the struggles you've had along the way getting to where you are?
Passing Java.
Yep. That was one of the first struggles I remember, is getting through Kana Macros Java. And actually I dropped on the last day because I chickened out. I was too overwhelmed, and then I had to take the proficiency test in August. So
That was a rough one.
yeah, but I would also say, like, me thinking about everything was definitely getting rejected like my sophomore year from all those jobs. Like, I remember at some point, like, it was just insane. Like, my inbox was just full of all these emails, and they all always sound the same. Like, thank you so much for applying. You have amazing qualifications, but unfortunately, we already reached our limit, and stuff like that. And it was just like really getting to me. And I called like my mentor at one point, who works at Google, Stephanie Hippo, and I was just like crying to her because I was like, I don't know if I'll ever get a job. So like, if you ever get there, just think of me. And I ended up getting a job just fine. It's just like a question of like pushing through and like getting over that hump. But then also just like classes, try not to take more than 3 computer science classes a semester, because I ended up doing that one time and I really regretted it. When like my last week, I remember I had 4 big assignments due, and I think I pulled like 2 all-nighters, and then ended up having a mental breakdown because I was so sleep deprived. So yeah, just try to like disperse it all. Otherwise it just becomes too much.
Yeah, I've been there too. This semester is literally all the rest of my computer science classes that I needed to graduate at once. I'm taking like 4 of them. But
Oh,
at the end of the day, you learn that like you really love it. Because otherwise you wouldn't have been able to make it this far. But yeah, I mean, what are some good moments that you guys have had over the years with computer science? Like, what are some fun experiences where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it works?
First hackathon was so wild. So this was the Cleveland Medical Hackathon. It was my sophomore year, and yeah, I'd never really done one before, but I was coming in like with an idea that like we developed at a business case competition. So all the like business analysis for it was done, but there was no one. I was the only person that had a coding background on my team. So basically, my other team members did a great job of like talking to the experts that were there and like finding out exactly what we needed to build, like system architecture wise. But then like the whole night was me just putting it together, didn't really know what was gonna happen. But then like slowly but surely, like watching my solution come to life was amazing. And that really kind of like cemented my interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also was gonna say a hackathon. I remember actually, like I got really close with my roommates through MHacks that we went together like 2 years ago, and we ended up building like a project with the Lyft API. We didn't win the first prize, but like the developers really liked our idea, so they ended up giving us the leftover prize, which was 1 pair of AirPods for the 3 of us. And I just thought that was like really funny. Because I mean, I was really glad because I never won anything else at a hackathon, but like we got so close, but like not quite there yet. But yeah, that was a really fun fun experience.
How did you share the AirPods?
So he ended up paying us $50 each, and then we just had him have it. Yep.
See, I have like 3 experiences, but I'll be quick about them. So the first experience was software engineering sophomore year. Have you guys ever played Rocket League before? Or like, it's basically car soccer. Well, my group decided we're going to create a game called Sakar, which was a 3D model of a like car and then an arena. And then I built the front end for it. But literally the night before the project was due and we had to present it, the axle on the car broke. And we were up all night trying to fix it. I didn't even know if like the front end and the back end were together because I gave it to somebody else to connect it. So literally the next day in class, the car's moving across the room and I'm like, oh my God, it works. Like the person in the group shouldn't be surprised it works, right? So that was a fun experience. But when I also worked for PNC, that was an interesting experience because they gave me a project to do in 10 weeks that usually web people have like 6 months to do. It was basically create a retention tool from scratch. And it needed to update on its own because nobody else in that sector or whatever knew how to code. So I literally spent this whole half of the summer, 8 weeks coding in Python, and then populating an Excel spreadsheet. And then I'm like, this is taking 3 minutes because I'm like showing these higher up execs like, yeah, I promise you it works. It's just taking a hot second because it needs to be fast. So the week right before it needed to work, I decided to axe my idea completely and build it using Tableau, populated from big data sources, and it worked. And I was so happy it worked the day before I had to present it. And then my third experience was about 2 hours ago. I'm doing a project for my senior project class, and it's a video game for stroke victims. So it's basically a virtual reality game building a sandwich. So my sandwich pieces weren't moving for like the past 3 weeks. And then I like typed one line of code and it started moving and I was jumping up and down, almost cried. I was so happy.
That's the best feeling when something works after like a really long time, but not. Yeah.
Yeah. So what advice do you guys have for people regarding like coding or just like college in general, like including hackathons, social life, everything, and the stress of it all? What do you guys suggest?
I mean, I would say like definitely college was like super tough experience for me, and like looking back on it now is like my 5th year about to finish. I definitely think that like my mental health suffered through it all because I'm a person that like stresses out a lot when it comes to classes and internships and everything. So I would just say like really like try not to overstress and overdo it. Like don't push always for the best GPA, especially like in this major. It's okay to not have all A's. Like recruiters don't really care. And like try to also enjoy it. I think that's something that like looking back, like I'm really glad that even though like I like was trying to study as much as possible, I still like put time aside, to like spend time with like my friends because those are the memories I'll be like looking at. I know I sound like an old person right now. It's like really sentimental, but like seriously, like I wouldn't want to take away those experiences ever. But like other than that, like the hackathons, I think all the stuff we talked about, like how to kind of get the first experience on your resume, how to make the connections, like how to sign the full-time job, like those are all really valuable. So I think just balancing it all is really tough. And I think in terms of classes, just work with people because I cannot imagine like doing this degree by myself. Like the amounts of work, like if I didn't have people who would sometimes take notes for me in class when I couldn't go, like who would work on problem sets with me or projects or like help me debug at like 3 a.m, I would never finish this degree. And I think like making those connections is the most valuable thing because like those honestly like will last me for a really long time, and those are the people that can also refer you to further roles and help you with your career.
I agree 100%. I remember coming from high school, I was very much a lone ranger doing things all by myself. And I'm like, yeah, I can totally do great, get straight A's like I did in high school. First semester, freshman year, was just like whiplash, like what the heck just happened? And it really taught me that you can't do things on your own. You really need to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help either. Like go to office hours, go to TA sessions, like get it where it's at. You're paying for these classes, so like milk them. Make sure you're getting them for every drop that they're worth, because at the end of the day, like, it's worth it because you're at a job doing really well and you know this material because you took that extra mile when you weren't really feeling it and you'd rather watch an extra episode of that Netflix TV show you really like. You went to that professor's office hours and you did really well on that test and you're not stressed anymore. It's definitely a ripple effect when you don't study because you rather take like pleasure or something like that. But then if you think about it, if you get your work done at the beginning of the day, you get to spend time with your friends, you get to go do fun things. That's one thing that like I really I wouldn't necessarily say regret, but I was saving a lot of stuff for the semester. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have fun at Springfest. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And I spent a lot of time focused on work. And I used to play on the case volleyball team. So I spent a lot of time training and doing work, but I didn't really like actually take a moment to smell the roses and like take advantage of everything Case had to offer while I had the chance. And now I'm not at Case anymore. So it's like you really gotta take it for what it's worth as the process goes, because you never know what can happen. Another pandemic could happen a year from now, and then you were saving like going to another hackathon because you were too busy this weekend or something like that. So just keep that in mind, that take advantage of right now, take advantage of going to your professor's office hours, take advantage of networking events, even though you might not feel up to it right now, because at the end of the day, it is worth it. But yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, like everyone said, I think it is so important to figure out that balance, like with mental health and with putting in hard work and putting in minutes. For me, I kind of struggled because we exist within the context of this academic system where failure is seen as bad. But one thing I've learned over the past couple of years is that sometimes not everything you do is going to succeed, but that doesn't mean you won't learn from it. And even when if I look at stats overall, like every job I applied for versus every job I actually got, that number is not good. It's not, that's just the way it boils down. But does that mean the outcome was bad? No. Does that mean there weren't lessons that were learned along the way? No. But when you're in the thick of it, and when you are getting all those emails in your inbox, or when you are getting the recruiter say, "Oh, come back next year," it really hurts in that moment. But overall, like the numbers even out.
You end up forgetting too. Like you're like, oh wait, they rejected me. Did I actually apply for that job? But all right. Does anybody have any last minute questions for any of us? Sarah.
Hi, so the first, what you guys said was really inspirational, so thank you. But also just one last question for, I think it was Nsisong that you mentioned you were kind of into the more human aspect of like technology. And like, I'm kind of like into that side too, or like kind of UI, UX. So I was just kind of like wondering like what you did to like hone on it in that skill, especially because like you said that you're kind of creating your own major at Case.
Yeah, great question. I've just had to look for kind of cool crossover opportunities that kind of present both. Like this semester, I'm taking a class on, it's called VR, and what is it called? Wow, I'm so sorry. It's called Cognition and Virtual Reality. So it's in the cognitive science department. So we're not actually coding in the class, but we're reading a bunch of papers about the development of virtual reality, why it works, how it works, and then being able to have discussions on that. So that's been a cool aspect. Also, I recommend taking some business classes. So I'm a business management secondary major, and I find in Weatherhead there's good, because there's business people in Weatherhead, but there's also a lot of opportunities for interdisciplinary teams there where you can, because I know a lot in our business classes will come up with an idea for a product, but there isn't always someone on the team that can actually build that product. So bringing your insights to that also will help with a lot of growth. And then just finding conferences you can, also through Weatherhead, I found a lot of like I got to do sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but I got to do a talk with Mike Fisher, who's the CTO of Etsy, but that was through the business school. But since I was there, I had the opportunity to talk about his experiences within technology. So I think just finding whatever crossovers you can, whether that be choosing classes or whether that be just asking people who are interested in building a product but don't necessarily have the technical know-how to do it can help you make important connections, if that was helpful.
Yeah, no, that helps a lot. I'm also trying to look into a secondary major in business management. So I'll
Sweet.
make sure to like use my resources.
We love
Also,
to hear it.
too, there's a class that I'm actually currently taking right now, ECS 600 Special Topics. It's a mixture. It's in both the computer science and business. So basically, we're working with Penske right now to develop an app for them, but we have master students in marketing on the team also, as well as like the team's made up of 8 people and 6 of 8 are computer science majors, but some of them are dual discipline. Like I'm computer science and marketing, and like somebody else is like computer science and business or cognitive science as well. So there's a lot of intertwining between majors.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, I guess we can probably wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Professor Everin, do you have anything you would like to add?
I just would like to thank you all 3 of you, and this was a very insightful conversation. Thank you very much for taking your time to join us tonight. So, and hope and to everyone, hopefully everybody is staying safe and healthy in these trying times. So thank you very much for joining us tonight.